Welcome back. This town hall discussion is titled, How Can Trust Be Strengthened Between the Government and Youth Activists? I'm positive it will be a very thought-provoking session. To moderate this session, we're very pleased to introduce a network coordinator at the United Network of Young Peace Builders, a global network of youth-led peace-building organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Ludmila Andrade.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending where you are. I am Ludmila Andrade. I am the network coordinator at the United Network of Young Peace Builders, and I will be moderating the discussion today. So thank you for joining. I hope you can all hear me and see me okay. I hope technology will be on our side on the session. And I will now introduce our panelists who are not only great speakers, very inspiring, and I hope that they will bring a lot to the conversation. So as I said, I'm the network coordinator of UNOY Peace Builder, a global network of youth-led peace building organizations. And I've been working on the Youth Peace and Security Agenda, or YPS agenda, since 2015, since before 2250 was adopted. So it's been such an amazing journey seeing the growth and the strengthening of this agenda. The first speaker, panelist or colleague of mine as well, is Miridu. He is the co-founder of Youth for Peace Education, Advocacy, Activism, Humanitarian Support Network, Capacity Development of several stakeholders. And I will also soon copy his full bio in the chat so you can hear all of his engagements, which are many. Same thing for Shaugi Ahmed. He is originally from Sudan, and he's currently working as a talent manager in Place Network. That is a Paris-based startup that unlocks hidden opportunities of newcomer talents in Europe and matches with economic actors in entrepreneurship, employment, public leadership, and higher education. And finally, I'm happy to introduce Sama Ben Tarif. She works with Integrated International, that is a leading socio-economic consultancy, is specialized in monitoring and evaluation, design, program design, gender, and social innovation. She is also a member of the Jordanian National Coalition on Youth, Peace, and Security. So we'll be talking today about how to build successful coalitions or groups to work on YPS in the national level. And why does it matter? Well, since 2015, when the first resolution on YPS was adopted, so many things happened. 2 new resolutions have been adopted, reconfirming the commitment of the international community to young peace builders. We have the progress study, and now we have next year the Doha conference happening, which is a quite unique moment because it will bring high-level decision makers, including heads of states, ministers, etc., and young peace builders themselves to discuss the best way to involve young people in peace processes. So it will be what we have been for so long advocating, that it's this intergenerational dialogue, having young people as essential stakeholders in peace building. So in the lead up to that, we'll have this conversation and try to take a little bit of stock on what has happened on the national level, regional level, and global level, what has worked in terms of these multi-stakeholder and intergenerational partnerships, what are some of the challenges, what are the lessons learned, and what you guys that are watching us can take home and strengthen tips, lessons learned, strategies, approaches that you can take home to start or strengthen the work that you're doing with stakeholders in your context. So I will start the first question, and I would like all my colleagues to answer so we can kickstart the conversation on why is a national strategy on youth peace and security important in your context? Why does it matter? Why do we need one? And Miridu, I will maybe give the floor to you first, and then we can offer the others. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to share with you some of the things that we have been doing in India and in Asia Pacific. And definitely we want to do more around it. So when we talk about youth peace and security national level strategy, if you want to understand what the youth peace and security strategy might look like, how to start it, we first need to understand what is the peace building context in any country is. To analyze, and I'm taking an example of my own country, India. And if you try to understand it, first we can see that the India is standing at 141st position out of 163 in the Global Peace Index. This Global Peace Index has 23 indicators which are related to ongoing domestic and international conflicts. So we need to understand what are these different indicators and how each country is performing on these various indicators. Then if a country, let's say, is falling at 141st position out of 163, then we are definitely falling behind a lot. Still, we will see that there is a lot of national and international apathy. National, you can very well see. Uh, National, you can definitely very well see by the ranking that we have. And international, the issue is that a lot of international agencies, they are considering India as a moderately self-sufficient country, or are still like finding that it's a challenging for them to think from a bigger lens and going beyond health or education kind of priorities. So that's where like how stakeholders are thinking about a context that becomes important. Now, even if let's say one country wants to one international stakeholder wants to do something, the challenges are some of the laws that the country has. So this, let's say, this specific foreign regulation contribution act that we have in India. So the challenge is that this seems like having a lot of trust issues, and it seems to be very heavy instrument to suffocate operations. There was one intelligence bureau level report which says that a significant number of Indian NGOs, non-government organizations, funded by donors based in US, UK, Germany, Netherlands, have been using people-centric issues to create an environment which lend itself to stall development projects. So if there is this kind of trust issue between the NGOs and foreign international actors and the government, then definitely the partnerships are not going very smooth. Now, this is the international context. If we talk about the national context, the another important area where people can participate is the private sector. So private sector has this instrument which is called corporate social responsibilities, and India is the first country to make it mandatory by, let's say, spending 2 to 3% of your profit if you are having a profit range limit up to certain $1 million or something like that. And on an average, every year, these corporates in total are spending somewhere around 2 billion US dollars from last 3 years. Every year they are spending this much of amount, but this amount is limited to be spent only on specific categories. So there is this schedule 7th, and this schedule allows you to spend on these 7 or 8 specific thematic areas or development sector areas, and peace building is not one of them. So this is a whole you can see like what is the context of peace building. Now we talk about youth peace building context in the same country. So we have 400 million young people in the country, but still like India has less than 1.5% parliamentarians under the age group, under this youth age group, 18 to 29 years old. Less than 1.5% parliamentarians. Second is the ownership of YPS agenda. So we are having 3.4 million NGOs registered in India, but there are very few who are actually working on youth for peace kind of work. There are few, like say 5 or 10 youth focused or youth led peace building organizations that I get to know who are working on these aspects, but still they are not having that specific youth led peace building kind of approach. Further, we talk about, let's say, national youth policy. I said like there are around 400 million young people in India. So this youth for peace, this national youth policy is having, let's say, 94-page document, and you try to search education, skills, and employment, then education is being referred by 105 times. Skill is being referred by 71 times. Employment is being referred by 45 times. But if you search harmony is just referred for 8 times in this 94-page document, and peace gets zero mention. So peace is not even mentioned in the national youth policy, which is serving to 400 million young people. And even though the country is ranking at 141st rank in the Global Peace Index. Now we talk about the funding or a specific ministry, which is Ministry of Youth Affairs. Then Ministry of Youth Affairs spent 87 million USD in 2018-19. So if you calculate it, it becomes 0.25, like it's a 25 cents on single youth in a year in India. 25 cents only. This is how much a Ministry of Youth Affairs is being able to spend in the country. And overall, how much have we have a global, let's say, national level consultation? There was just one consultation in last 5 years on UNSCR 2250, which is Youth Peace and Security Agenda. That was done in August 2017. It was attended by 8 ministries, 3 UN agencies, and 3 to 5 NGOs. So this is the Youth for Peace context that we have. So just wrapping it up, I was saying that this need a collective effort. The second is that this is a youth issue, so entire process need to be youth-led and youth-sensitive. And this process needs a lot of local ownership, recognition, and support for young people. And all the different these stakeholders need to align their approaches, and for that they need to have trust among each other, empathy for each other, and a will to support to each other. And that's why, like, I think this national youth strategy is important, because it can definitely do all of these things.
Thank you so much. So I will straight pass the words to you, Shogit. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ludmila. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, evening, mornings, events, and where are you at for the time being? So about the question, which was why is national youth peace and security strategy important in your context? I'm just going to relate it to my own context, which is as a person who comes from Sudan and living in Africa. Youth is literally belong like to more than 66% of the population in Africa. And whenever we search, for example, when it comes to people who are like really peace, when it comes to the peace processes that we are talking about, it was always about having people who were beyond 45, beyond 50 years old, who were in charge of deciding for us, who were in charge of making decisions for us. And having, for the first time, when we're speaking about it since the beginning of this millennium, the role of youth, and where we can see it accumulating in all these agreements and on all this articles that has been addressed by UN and by many other institutions, we can understand that it's really and quite important. Why? First of all, is it's important for economical and social fabric. When it comes to, as Meldul have already mentioned, I don't want to highlight it again, it's when it comes to CSR, profit, non-profit, or the governmental sectors, having this type of platform or having this type of agreeing in a similar context that youth needs to be enrolled, needs to be in the middle, needs to have a seat at the table is quite overwhelming. And for me, I believe it's not like a quest, it's more like a right for youth, knowing the population that we have, knowing the effect that we have. And I'm sure, as most of you have heard about what happened recently in the last 2 years in Sudan, my country, you can assess and following what happened and the role of youth in creating that change, you can see that why not, if youth manage to create such revolution and overthrow such dictatorship, how about letting them develop the country? How about letting them having seeds? How about having them to create change from inside? And that was something that I was really touched by. So mainly peace is for many people, they're talking about peace. It's always this jargon word that you can hear about in articles, in many institutions. However, to be able to acknowledge it, I feel that and to adapt it and cultivate it in the context of the government, in the context of profit, non-profit sectors, youth need to be there. Because they are the future, and they need to be there.
Thank you, Shogi. And last but not least, Samat, why is it important? The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. Nice to meeting you all. It is important for a country like Jordan because simply 63% of Jordanian population are under the age of 30. So as the resolution, so it is very important to a country to make sure that young people are fully engaged, to make sure that they are fully participating in the decision-making process. Moving on, because of that, let's say the Youth, Peace and Security National Coalition followed afforded by His Royal Highness Crown Prince Hussein bin Abdullah here in Jordan in 2017. It marks 2 years anniversary of the adoption for that resolution, and a coalition of youth and let's say peace-oriented civil society organization have launched that national coalition to make sure that youth here are fully engaged in the peace building process and the decision making for sure.
Thank you, everybody. So what I can hear from that, and this is something that we have been talking for so long, there is a democratic dividend and a demographic dividend. Young people in so many countries, we are a majority of the population, and in so many places we don't have this seat at the table. And we, as Meridu also said, it's important to have these national coalitions because each context is different, the priorities, the challenges. So we need to have policies and to have funding, to have agreements, and people working together around these very specific challenges, opportunities, resources that are nationally or even locally grounded, right? 2050 and the following resolutions, they are frameworks, they are very large. We need to understand what it means for each country to have an effective implementation. And Meridu, in his moment that he was talking, he also already hinted a little bit on how can we make these coalitions and how can we make these national strategies effective and successful. You talked about the need to have trust, you've talked about an enabling environment, so having laws that really allow people to come together. And I would like to also hear from you, to hear further from you on what does it take from not only from what we think, but also from our very experiences of what we have been doing in the past years, trying to build those strategies. So yeah, and I can see here in the chat, I'm taking a look, so many people from Yemen. Great, keep introducing yourselves and keep asking questions so we can also address that in our conversation. So should we maybe change or maybe we can continue with the same order. Meridu, very quickly, what does it need? What do we need for the building blocks for a successful national strategy?
Yeah, I think I already shared a few points, but the most important one which we need is the trust. That's where we need to start with, and later on definitely we can go into other points also. Maybe the first point, and I'm not actually talking about what can be the possible step at this point of time. I'm just talking about where we need to do more and how to build this trust between governments and the young peace builders. So the first thing we need to think is, are they well informed? Are they aware of what we are doing? Why we are doing? What is our like passion? What is our commitment? What are our values? They need to see this. So for that, we need to make effort. Second is that everyone will not be and cannot be your ally. That is definitely not the purpose that we want to have. So there will always be a few people in all the scenarios who can be and who will be your ally. Either they will be your ally by seeing your efforts, or by luck, or by time, however it happens. But important for us is that we first try to map the stakeholders, prioritize the people or the departments or the ministries who we want to meet, and then learn from other, learn about these people and these departments. The issue is when we try to reach to other stakeholders, we have this some kind of approach where we kind of consider them to a mean to an end, instead of thinking of them as a as person, and that's where the trust is not going to happen. So why don't we approach them not thinking that they are someone to lead this agenda or someone who can push this, rather than have the dialogue to connect and to understand their perspective and build the relation, and then slowly increase the buy-ins, and then slowly increase the higher expectation also. So that is something maybe more relevant to understand them as people. Then another thing, like after you have this kind of relationship, you need to follow this common ground approach where you try to match your expectation and their expectation of what they want to do. And then the very important thing is sometimes we don't realize the value of what is already there in the system. So can we use something which is already there in the system? That's also something important. It makes the government and the system itself, the institution itself, more favorable in terms of providing the support. I think Samay can agree to it, because if there was this kind of approach which was already this ministry was doing in Jordan, it was easy for them to maybe push this. Then another challenge is government is sometimes also worried about who will fund this. If you want to do certain kind of program, who will fund this program, or how this will happen? Maybe if it is possible, give them this assurance that you will raise that fund, or you will try to mobilize the resources also. So it is not only on the government is not just the only donor that we have. And then the last is that give more recognition and credit to the government. They are the stakeholder which usually do not get that kind of credit. Like, we are always criticizing them. Why don't we give them the recognition? Why don't we give them the credit which they deserve, and rather than to yourself? So it will also motivate them. Everyone needs little kind of this positive nudge that we can provide. So I think these are the things which will keep building this block, slowly build the trust. And then of course there are these fundamentals. You need to understand what is UNSCR 2250, what it says, what are the principles. You cannot negotiate between those. So those are anyways there. So we need to start with these parallel blocks.
Perfect. Shogi, would you like to follow up with that, the building blocks for a successful national strategy?
Thank you, Ludmila. When it comes to the national strategies, I believe that there is certain things that people need to be aware of, which is firstly is knowing the problem. Yeah, I mean, you can always draft, I don't know, a 200 idea, or start brainstorming within your network, within your organization, whatever institution that you're working on. However, just to understand the problem and make it clear for your companions and for the donors, or whoever, like your partners, or whoever people will be like working and fight with you this fight, you need to make it as clear and simple and accurate. If I'm just using this thing, if your grandmother didn't understand your idea, then that's that you need to revisit again, make sure that it's clear for them. Also, when it comes to mapping, and I think Baudel had already mentioned that, I'm just mention it again, which is about mapping, which is making sure that you understand the other players who are like mainly contributing and responding to the same issue. Because it's not just about creating a new entity. I mean, your goal is not to create an entity. Your goal is to create a change. So it's not about you. It's not about your ego. It's not about your personal branding, or call it whatever you want. You need to make sure that it's there. And all the people who will be your team or your supporters will be around you when you go to the fight, when you go to the arena, because it will be like that. It's not something that you can do in 1 day, 2 days, or a month. It will take time. So you need to have your support system with you, and make also when it comes to finding lobbying groups for strategies. And as you know, some countries has, and I'm just speaking from my experience in Sudan, and maybe it differs from a country to another, but within my context and my region, I would say it's quite bureaucratic when it comes to finding a way. So don't hesitate to ask people about how they manage to create strategies. start from the beginning, start from the bottom foundation, gather information, make it clear for your grandmother, so like as if she understood it, then you're good to go. And then make sure that you are creating this linkage with people who can support you within your processes. And mainly last point is that for strategies, you need to understand that, I mean, the globe is changing. We all understand right now, 2019 and 2020 is quite different with what's happening with the COVID-19. So as much as the world is dynamic, as much there is changes in the world, be dynamic. So your strategy, like if your information or your data was from 2019, 2018, I can assure you that it's not relevant so far with all the information that we have. So you need to be dynamic when it comes to your way of ideas and all the things in a way that anticipating not just your present or what you have done in the past, but also for your future. So that's how I see it.
Thank you. And I'll quickly also pass to Sama. Sama, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I think what makes, or what's the most important thing to be included in conducting a youth peace and security national strategy is partnership. As we all know, a partnership is one of the main key and main pillar under the UN security resolution. So talking about the National Jordanian Coalition, there is a partnership. The members, let's say, about this coalition is civil society organization, UN actors, government, as well universities and research institutes. So when we have partnership taking into consideration while designing this national youth peace and security strategy, this will allow us to have a successful one for sure, making sure taking into consideration all youth from all different backgrounds, their needs, their concerns into consideration for sure. Yes.
Thank you very much. So you guys brought different elements that I think we could boil down to the fact that it's know what you're talking about, prepare yourself on the knowledge of the resolution itself, but on the work that you are doing, what exactly do you need from whom, and also understanding that then you're going to have to bring people in, be donors, policymakers, other young people, and not everybody's going to be your ally, as Miridul said. But the good news is that not everybody needs to be your ally. You can build so much with key strategic people on your side. And on this, I would really recommend you to check our guide to kickstart the localization of 2250. It's currently being updated, so we will soon have a new version out that also supports you in kind of how can then I do this mapping, how can I identify, how can I bring people together. And from my experience from a global network of young people and youth-led organizations, we have a lot in our mind what we want, what is the ideal outcome. But what I have learned is that the process is just as important as the outcome. So making sure that you have this inclusive process, that people feel the ownership, that they feel that they do have a space to be listened to be considered. Maybe it might be that my idea is not even in the outcome document, but if I feel that I was legitimately listened to, I can still feel a part of this coalition. So the process does matter, and how you manage this process is just key to the success of the outcome of this strategy. And following up on that, we are already bringing examples from our own countries or regions. But is there anything that we would like to really pinpoint and say, okay, this was a lesson learned, this is something that others could learn from me, or a best practice, something that you think that could be replicated successfully in other contexts from the work that you have been doing in your country on YPS? And maybe I will shift a little bit here the order. Sama, if you would like to bring some of these best practices and lessons learned.
Okay, so when we are talking about the lessons learned, I think we do have to mention regarding as I told you before, regarding the Jordanian National Coalition here in Jordan, one of the main things we can consider as a lesson learned is the inclusive. In 2017, as I mentioned before, the coalition used to have the membership only with the a peace-oriented civil organization, civil organization society. But now, no, there are more inclusive background, different UN actors. Government is a part of this national coalition as well. Universities, research institute as well, and individual youth who are interested and who are aware of their crucial role in peace building process. So this can be considered as one of the lessons learned due to Jordanian experience. Another thing I would like to share is that young people or the youth, the youth member of this national Jordanian coalition have a main role in editing the term of references for this national coalition, not only just coming and everything is ready. No, they had their own voices, they had their own contribution in editing that term of references. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. That's an interesting and very specific, but very concrete contribution, because sometimes when you talk about youth participation, it feels so up in the air, and what does it really mean? But it's something as simple as contributing to the TOR. It's key to how the dynamics will play out, to how the process will be and the outcomes. And it's a best practice on participation and inclusivity. Shaugi.
Sure, Ludmila, thank you. For me, when it comes to this topic, I would choose one which I think a point that we also need to understand about when it comes to youth, peace, and security. There is also it's also about the role of women when it comes to that. So I'll just share something that happened recently. It's which happened, I believe, like during the last 2 weeks in Sudan. So during the last 2 weeks, finally, it has FGM, which is female genital mutilation, has been finally outlawed by the government of Sudan. And now I'm just also reflecting with what Ludmila has already mentioned, which is the word process. So what happened is that we were in 2020, this law has been introduced. However, the effort has started since the 80s. So we're talking about sometimes about strategies or changes that can take decades. Sometimes the fight that you will be fighting on, it won't be there. However, for me, I'm so lucky for the fact that I have been witnessing such law, which has been built by a strategy of youth and civil society organizations. So civil society organizations gather together, understand that, okay, there is a problem in Sudan. We're talking about 9 of every 10 women in Sudan has been access to unfortunately, for FGM. And how can we reduce that? So they have created some sort of a process, and they knew that it will take time because for many reasons, most likely politically, which was the overthrown government that we had before 2018 and so. And they managed to do that in more than 30 years. So this is like some sort of like a huge level of joy and happiness to be able to witness such a win, I would say. And also to understand and to share with the other audience for today is that when it comes to strategies and peace building, it's not a process that you can build. Again, I'm emphasizing that it's not a process that you will do in 1 week, 2 weeks. Sometimes it will take you years. Sometimes the fight, you won't be able to complete it at the end. However, you will be passing the light to other people who will be taking it from there. So be a fighter, and that's all.
Thank you. That's I think it's also really important to bring this voice that things will not always work out the way we want, despite our best efforts and how much we work. But when we do focus on the process and on the partnerships, you don't lose this. They remain, and it's something that you can build on after things maybe don't work out. In our network, we have seen a lot of people, that a lot of our members saying that a lot of their efforts are now under threat because of COVID. A lot of issues are arising, such as domestic violence or gender-based violence from this new context. But because they already had important connections with the communities, legitimacy among the local actors, they can build on it to now fight this new challenge. So you're not starting from scratch, and you're also building the new generations of young peace builders by bringing these people in, by being an inspiration, by being a voice in the community. So yeah, this is absolutely important, and we think a lot about, I think, projects and those intended outcomes and these indicators to monitor, but there are very strong things that come out of our engagement that we cannot measure, and that maybe you don't put in the report for the donor, but that they are essential in creating change and in making these dynamics more inclusive, and etc. Thank you so much for that. And I think we could move as well to one of our last points, because it's also quite a broad one, and we can also recap if anything was lost along the way, or anything else that you would like to add that you haven't done yet, which is about the key roles of different stakeholders. We talk a lot about youth-led and youth leadership, but we also recognize that we need partnerships, but not everybody's doing the same inside those partnerships. So how can we really harness the best of the resources, the capacity, and the knowledge of each of the partners that we have around our table? What is the best role that they can then play? Maybe Meridu, you would like to start now that you're back with us.
Sure. So each stakeholder has a different role, and like this definitely need to be discussed on a table where the table is like organized by young people and led by them, and having a youth sensitive way of understanding who brings what to that table. That cannot always be fund, but that can be fund also, that can be other resources, that can be access to some of the existing platforms that that we have. Um, we also need to think what comes from the intergenerational spaces, where the organizations who have been already working on youth issues for some time, how can they create a certain kind of how can they like tie up this gap which we have, maybe because of the initial credibility, because of not having that much of resources as young peace builders. So we can think from that lenses. Every stakeholder is important in some way, pushing the agenda, because when we try to see youth peace building, it's the peace building thing from youth lenses. So it's not discarding, let's say, education, not discarding health or entrepreneurship in this way. So few stakeholders might want to work more on that, but are we doing enough in terms of young people's voices for the rights that they have, or the kind of atrocities, let's say, some of the contexts, be it Sudan or be it some other countries, has already gone through. So those kind of spaces are difficult one, where people need to first reconcile. They need to have these dialogues to understand what is required and why it is important to do things. And like partnerships are good, of course, and like you said, like it's there will be these challenges where people will be try to have their own goals. Every stakeholder might also have their own goals, but that need to be discussed. But to have that kind of discussion, it is important that there is this larger understanding of this like this whole aspect or this whole agenda, and also push towards it. So even if a stakeholder is trying to, let's say, think like maybe trying to partially work on the agenda and not actually able to commit to it perfectly, then I think this larger awareness and larger push will help at that point of time. So we have a lot of young people, and young people are thinking like, okay, what can be done in the trust? But how we can start it from the basic is that first we need to understand what does this say, like understanding what are the guiding principle behind like we are asking for these youth participation or meaningful and active participation of young people in these decision making. So starting from that, then understanding what the recommendation says, which can be from missing piece report, let's say, then working on the ground to build the momentum, local awareness, local ownership, having using local language towards it. A lot of partners and stakeholders might just not feel willing to participate if they are seeing that this is a UN driven agenda, or if this is a language which is like only English is being used all the time, or French is being used all the time, maybe their own languages. So local language. And then this coalition which is youth led but which is having multi-generational, intergenerational partners in that. And like Samay was saying, it is like time consuming. It is going to happen in a long term. So divide the chunk. Maybe someone can do the like awareness raising, someone can do something else by bringing the stakeholders, someone can bridge this gap. So that kind of role different stakeholder can decide. But also among the stakeholders, you will find that some of the stakeholders are more open to have this conversation. For an example, in India, the state government or province level government are more open than the central level government when we want to have certain kind of changes. So maybe you try to build the momentum by state, identify the appropriate state level departments who can become the YPS champion, and then build their capacity so that they are also putting some positive pressure on this whole consortium or the coalition that you can bring. Now also the important is to learn from other spaces. Maybe what I can learn is something what Jordan is doing, how they are, let's say, already having so many stakeholders and they can contribute. So we need to keep sharing these spaces. Specific stakeholders might find best practices in different contexts, and we also need to map it on a regular basis, and then try to see what these perspective, youth peace and security perspective, can come in different policies. So I know like one of UNOI member organization is working on interfaith policy in Pakistan, one of the province of the Pakistan. So the approach what they are having is trying to see what youth-led peace building perspective, how it can come into the interfaith perspective also. So try to see it. In India also we have this national youth policy. We were also trying to see what different stakeholders are doing and how we can provide youth peace and security related let's say recommendations to different stakeholders and how they can continue doing more. So it's more of this understanding, and yeah, like we still need to learn a lot, because unfortunately there are not many countries which are already championing youth peace and security agenda on a regular basis. So different stakeholder, the field is completely wide, and people can pick up and start doing some of the.
Thank you. Shogi, would you like to follow up?
Sure. Thank you, Mila. I mean, for when it comes to the key roles, I'm just remembering again from my context, because this is the concept for today, and I'm just trying to enrich and having different perspectives about this topic. In my country, in Sudan, and in my region, whenever something happened, we always say government. Government is the problem. Is the problem of the government. Government needs to deal with it. It's not my thing. However, sometimes when you think about it, you feel also that most of our culture, like the accumulating culture and accumulating experiences that we had, is part of the problem, unfortunately. I'm not trying to put fingers right now saying that youth is the problem or elders are the problem or government ministers. No, it's about be more like solution oriented. And to be able to reach that, I feel that there is a huge part that relies on the government side. So when the key roles for the government, I can and all the main like government, private, non-profit sector, civil society or whatever, like institutions that they need to work on. I believe that there is a need to create a common ground and maybe more like space, I would say. So the common ground, which is a space where people can get the chance to speak up and share, because some of the things that we have, misconception that we had in our heads, which is like about the government or about the elders or the government people, seeing that the youth are they don't understand what's the benefit of, or what's the use of what you're talking about right now, because you don't know nothing based on your lack of experience or whatever justification. It's quite irrelevant, and it's not adding. It's more like a lose-lose situation for all the parts. So having such spaces where people can get a chance to speak up, to reflect, not just between youth and elders or governments and CSOs, but to have it also in between them. So having best practice between them, how what you think about that, and how can we enrich that? How can we add to that? How can we build from that? All these questions and things, I feel that people need to reflect and start to think about it. And it's a common responsibility. It's not something that needs to be specific for a specific domain or sector, but it's for everyone. Second key thing, which is, I think for me, it's it's 2 points. So the second one is mainly having the chance to change the narrative about youth. So like talking about CEOs, talking about ministers, we need to see ministers from youth background, because they will lead the way for the future. Because whenever you talk about, okay, let's change the narrative, let's do strategy, sometimes you don't feel like, because all the people who sitting with you at the table are 45 and 50, and it will be so hard for you to convince. Rather than, if you're thinking about it from the other way, how can you introduce some people who can exemplify, people who can prove, people who can show the potential of youth, and who can lead the way for the future on changing, having a magnificent change in the future. So you need to put some sort of, like one minister, one CEO, a head of organization, who like a real big organization, to be like having whoever, like what, again, a director or something like that, who can reach. So okay, people can be able to understand and see the potential of youth on when it comes to that. And again, it will be, when it comes to the key roles, it won't be as clear. So you need to find your way on that. You need to identify, you need to speak with other people, which is the most common interest, to identify your role as a person that belongs to the civil society. And I'm just trying to address everyone, because I'm not sure who is with the audience. So I'm just trying to keep it up. I'm sure that most of them are youth, but also whatever institution or organization or whatever, try to make sure that you're having your own space, talk, speak with others, let people support other people, support youth mainly, enable them to reach to another level. And hopefully we'll be able to identify roles in the future, more like a global roles.
Great, thank you, Shaugi. Saman, the floor is yours to talk about your experience with the Jordanian National Coalition.
Okay, thank you. I think the most important factor, as you mentioned, stakeholders should have or include, is a clear vision. Stakeholders should have a clear vision. For example, I would be reflecting back to the Jordanian experience. The Jordanian National Coalition, the main role or the main vision of it is to simply have an effective role in building and amplifying the momentum generated by Jordan's past and present leadership, in order to actualize this UN Security Council resolution agenda, bringing together all relevant stakeholders, taking stock of the current situation and exploring ways forward to ensure youth active participation and engagement continue to be very heart of this vision. So once the stakeholders have this clear vision about making sure to fully engage and fully participate youth, this can lead to a more participation for sure.
Thank you so much, Sama. And so, yeah, what I'm hearing is we cannot be prescriptive. There is not a recipe that everybody can follow and you're going to reach the perfect national strategy. But if you have the knowledge of both the field and the YPS agenda, together you can build this common vision, and you can build how together with the people that are willing to do it. And from your from the contributions from the three of you, I could also address a little bit some of the questions that I saw on the chat box that we didn't have the chance to address specifically, but I think these contributions touched upon several of those. So, for instance, if a UN Security Council resolution is strong enough to ensure the development of the agenda? Well, the resolution is just a tool. It's just a paper like many other papers that we have in New York. So how it's going to be implemented, it's up to us as a community of young leaders, young peace builders, and stakeholders that are committed to youth participation in peace building. And I think we're being very successful because the fact that we had so many follow-up steps, other resolutions, but also national action plans, national coalitions, or local initiatives, it shows that we are using this tool the right way. And I think that the last resolution is a great example. The fact that we have reporting mechanisms, this is great. This is how we keep the agenda, we keep YPS in the agenda of the Security Council, and we trickle down to the member states of the UN. So I think this is an important thing. And another one that a lot of people brought the question of repressive governments or governments that don't listen to the young activists or civil society more largely. I think that then it's very important to remain conflict sensitive, be aware of the context in which you are operating so you don't put yourself in unnecessary danger, but find alternative entry points. Like Miridu said, sometimes local governments are a little bit more open to it. So if strategically several youth groups contact their local governments, we can then have a bottom-up approach. We don't need to go to the ministry directly. So also having alternative strategies and knowing how to operate in your context, having partners that will protect you in case you have a more closed civic space, it's essential. Within our network, with our members, we're more and more doing two things. One, committing to teaching our members to work safely online, offline, etc. And two, teaching and building the capacity of non-youth stakeholders to engage with young peace builders in a way that it's based on equality, it's based on meaningful participation, really treating us as equal and essential partners, because sometimes there's a lot of good intentions, but there's not the capacity. So it's also about building the capacity of non-youth actors. So I will, in terms of contributions, I can maybe leave it to here, and we can after maybe take a look in the chat box and see if anything was missed and address it through other means. But I would really like to invite you guys to also keep using. There are a lot of resources being developed, a lot of best practices being shared in the social media, website, etc. of UNOY Peace Builders, Search for Common Ground, and other partners of the Global Coalition on Youth, Peace and Security. So do stay tuned, because there is a lot out there to support you in your effort to build a national strategy, in your efforts to mobilize resources, mobilize stakeholders. There's a lot there. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, for sure. And we, from the Global Coalition, from UNOY, from Search, we always want to hear from you. We always want to know how we can better support this global community of young peace builders, and yeah, to elevate the efforts that you are already doing, because I am pretty sure that most of you listening to us are not starting from scratch. I would give the floor now to Saji to make a short contribution from our side before we close this panel.
Maybe by the time Saji is joining, I can just quickly mention one thing. Young people themselves are also very important key stakeholder in this. So if resolutions are not strong, or if those are becoming stronger, it is also because young people are contributing a lot and seeing their way. There is language in 2015 and language in 2020's resolution is like somehow improving. So that is also because they are seeing, okay, young people are doing amazing work. Why don't we trust them more? Why don't we provide them more, like better language, better support for them? So in all of these spaces, we can play a key role. Sorry. Thank you, Sajin.
Thank you, Mridu, for backing me up. And thank you, Ludmila and Jyoti and Sama, for doing an excellent job facilitating and sharing some good guidance for all of us. My name is Serge Previs. I have two hats. One is I work at Search for Common Ground, direct our children and youth programs. The other hat I wear is I co-chair the Global Coalition on Youth, Peace and Security, which is a global coalition that includes United Nations actors, international organizations, youth-led organizations, and intergovernmental bodies that including the European Union, African Union, and others. And we were the ones who helped shape this agenda on youth, peace, and security as seeing young people as partners, as opposed to seeing them as a burden or a threat to national security. And what we have seen now is, thanks to many of these discussions and through these several days, is that young people, COVID-19 pandemic has also taught us that young people are essential for national security and well-being as well. It's no longer that we can afford to say young people are a threat or a burden, but they are essential partners in peace and security and national security issues. So I wanted to first thank everyone for joining all the way from Yemen and Malaysia to the Philippines to Peru to Morocco and others. So thank you for being here to participate. What will happen with this session, the information that was shared, we will gather this. And in next year, and we are part of a global conversation that we're having several global consultations like this that will help inform governments around how to develop a national strategy that is youth inclusive. And that inclusivity will be shared then with heads of government in next year in Qatar, when the government of Qatar, Colombia, and Finland are hosting an event with presidents and prime ministers next year. We want to share this with them when it's launched. So all your information, the questions helped us shape these recommendations more. This will be launched, and it is in partnership with the Education Above All Foundation, Reach Out to Asia. I want to thank all of you for helping to organize this. These things don't happen naturally, so I'm really grateful to Education Above All and Reach Out to Asia for hosting us, having these conversations, but also hosting us next year at the high-level conference as well. So that's all part of this effort. So thank you again, and hope you stay safe. And we'll connect offline and the links that I shared with you. All the best.
Thank you, Sajid. Thank you for the three speakers and everybody who was watching.
Thank you all.
Have a good morning, afternoon, evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ludmila, and all the superb speakers in that session. We're really fortunate to have such experienced experts here at the Virtual Empower 2020 to share their wisdom with us. We hope you all enjoyed the Day 4 sessions. I would like to thank you for your ongoing participation. We would also like to remind you that in order to qualify for our Virtual Empower 2020 certificate, you will have to complete a post-conference survey at the end of Day 5. That survey can be accessed through your dashboard. Please join us tomorrow for our final day of Virtual Empower 2020. I can't believe it's gone so quickly. However, let's get this conference going by using the hashtag Empower2020. Let's make it trending. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow in the webinar room. Have a great day.